What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 347. Cocaine and popcorn. Yeah. I'm surprised YouTube let me put that as the title, but they did. So, this is going to be kind of an interesting one. They're all interesting. We're living in interesting times. I love interesting things. You guys notice that I say interesting and fascinating a lot. And so, but I like interesting things. It's, keeps my brain occupied. And Lord knows I need as much brain movement as possible. But yeah, cocaine and popcorn is going to be a good one. But welcome in. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we watch the crazy things that are happening around this world. As we know, we live in the end times and things are progressively steamrolling, I guess you could say, towards the end times, things that'll happen post-rapture into the day of the Lord. And so we do what we're called to do. We're called to be watchmen. We're called to pay attention and to see what's going on. And there's so much deception. There's so much bad information. There's so much personal and agenda-driven bias out there. It's hard to find what's going on, find the truth of what's going on. And we do our best around here. As we know, we live in a fallen, deceiving world, but we do our best. But that's what we're called to do. And so we attempt to do that to the best of our ability, right? Certainly hope so. But glad to have you guys here. Thank you for joining me today. Cocaine and popcorn. So we're going to be talking a lot about drug stuff, basically what's going on with drug trafficking, drug traffickers, modern events with drug trafficking, history with drug trafficking, how it's connected to the CIA and the U.S. government and all that type of stuff. There's a lot going on there. So we'll be talking about that. And then popcorn, we're watching the theater of what's going on. Everything is hypocritical. Everything is fake. Everything is manipulative and deceiving and deceptive and all those types of words. And so we gotta remember that. And so we're not participating in it. We're sitting there with our buckets of popcorn, not with cocaine. Don't have cocaine with that. Leave that to Tony Montana, him and his little friend. We're just eating the popcorn as we're watching the crazy things happen. And we'll be going over a few things with drug stuff. We'll be going over some stuff with the Venezuela situation. If you guys aren't sick of me talking, or if you guys are sick of me talking about Venezuela, well, we're still going to talk about it. I still think that there's something big brewing with that. But we'll see. We'll see. You never know. It could fizzle away, but we'll see. We also got some stuff when it comes to the National Guard shooter thing. Some information regarding that. I mentioned that on the Wretched Recap on Friday. I got some more information on that, so I'll just let you guys know what's going on. No, I don't have an answer for it. I'm just going to tell you what I found, and we'll go from there. And then we got some more deceptive tactics. The deception runs deep with Turning Point USA and all that type of stuff. So all these things kind of bleed over into each other in some way, shape, or form, which is kind of interesting. Again, interesting. But I think it's fun when it's that way. So this should be good. Anyways, good to have you guys here. Thank you guys for joining me, and hopefully everybody is doing well. Let's see here. Yeah, like me, my mom used to say she has an active mind. Yeah, I'm one of those people where if my mind is not occupied doing something, thinking of something, then I go stir crazy. Just ask my dad. He knows that I can't sit still. I can't relax. I always feel like I have to be doing something. But good to have you guys here. Hopefully you guys had a good time eating all the food and stuff over the week and everything. I'm sure a lot of you are still eating that food. It seems to expand. You just can't get rid of all the stuff. But yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get into housekeeping because we got a ton of stuff to cover.
I think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. Not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so that's what we do. That's the whole point around here. If we're not doing it for the Lord, then what on earth are we doing it for at all? So if you guys can do me a solid, like, share, subscribe, it helps with the algorithm, helps reach people who have questions, who are trying to figure out what's going on. They see that there's something weird happening. They want to know what's going on, and hopefully we can reach them and then hit them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So if you guys do me a solid, like, share, subscribe. Also, if you guys can, follow Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back live streaming over on Rumble, Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that we can't necessarily put in video format. We just kind of throw up on the Telegram stuff. But if you don't like Rumble, you don't like Telegram, I get it. Trust me. I completely understand. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything going on with podcasts and live streams and announcements, the free book to download, and all the other stuff that you want to know what's going on with Wretched Watchmen. So make sure you guys go ahead and bookmark the website so you're always in the know. Also, if you guys would like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. This is entirely free. I believe ministry should be free. I don't understand why that's a hard concept for a lot of them out there, but it should be free, in my opinion. The gospel is free. Jesus gives us the free gift, and our goal is to not try and make a profit off of people's souls, but to try and get as many souls to Jesus Christ before all hell breaks loose on the earth. Amen? That's what I say. But yeah, so it's all run because of you guys with your donations and everything. And so this works because of you. And I'm so grateful and thankful for your support and your blessings, your donations, your prayers, everything. You guys are awesome. I love getting emails in the middle of the week that are just saying, praying for you and all that stuff. It's great. Appreciate you guys. So thank you for that. Last update, of course, I've been doing this recently. I think it's helping. It helped on the last one, I believe. So just remember, on Fridays, we release the Wretched Recap every Friday at noon Central on YouTube, and then 1 p.m. Central on Rumble. For some reason, Rumble still won't let me post a video at noon. I don't know why. But still, every Friday, we cover about 5 different news topics that we haven't covered during the week. Just little things. It's a quick hit show. It's only about 20 minutes long. So make sure you guys tune in for those. And you guys get new information and stuff like that on Fridays. So make sure you guys check that out. Check that out. Okay. Everybody doing all right here? All right. Just making sure everybody's doing good. The Rumble chat always throws me off because they got dancing bananas. They got weird fat pugs shaking their tail feathers. They got cats with their mouths open and stuff. You guys are crazy. Anyway, so it's Mindy G's throwing them in there. Anyways, all right, let's go ahead. And it is Saturday. I'm still looking at it. I got to stop looking at it. I'm losing track. We got Wretched Weather Report because it's Saturday. Let's do that.
Everybody got their fancy hats? Let's go!
All right, everybody get your fancy hats and let's go ahead. I gotta stop looking at the Rumble chat. All right, let's go ahead and check out what we got going on when it comes to the Wretched Weather Report. What we do is we just keep track of the trends of what's going on with natural events, things, weather-related stuff, things like storms and floodings and hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, and all that type of stuff. As we know, these are birth pangs that are going to increase in size and frequency as we get closer and into the day of the Lord, and so it's worth keeping track. Again, I'm not a weather guy or anything like that. I don't claim to be, but I think it is worth just keeping an eye on it, specifically for trends, as well as praying for those around the world dealing with tragic events in regards to weather-related things. So this past week, as far as earthquakes, we got a few earthquakes, not a lot, not a little. We've kind of had the extreme recently the past month or so where we've had double-sided lists, and then we've had just 3 on there. So as far as large-scale earthquakes, 5.5 magnitude and up, yeah, we got a 5.5 in Adak, Alaska. It's the United States. 5.5 in Eritrea, which is a region of Ethiopia. I actually learned that today. I failed geography, but I did learn that today. So ask me again tomorrow. I probably couldn't tell you where it's at. The big one of the week was a 6.6 in Sinabang, Indonesia, a 6.0 in Willow, Alaska. So Alaska got a couple big ones there. 5.6 in Hihafotonga. Then there's a 5.8 in Titan, Guatemala, and then a 5.9 in the Macquarie Island, Australia region. As far as trends go, The Macquarie Island region has been really quiet lately. That used to be one of those like epicenters where we were always getting 2-3 of those every week. And it's been extremely quiet as of recent. So that's the first large one that we've seen in, I want to say, at least 7-8 months, somewhere around there. So just a little trend thing that I've been paying attention to. That used to be a hot spot and it kind of stopped. So we'll see if it kicks back up again. As far as this past week is volcanoes, we got 42 active eruptions, which is +2 from last week. So we're kind of getting closer back to that usual global average that we're sitting in. We're still low. We've been low for the past couple months, but it might kick back up soon. We're just paying attention. And so we have 6 as far as eruptions. We got 6 in North America, 5 in South America, 1 in Europe, 2 in Antarctica, 4 in Africa, which is +1 from last week, 17 in Asia, which is +1 from last week, and 7 in Oceania. So that's what we got when it comes to earthquakes and volcanoes. A couple things to point out for prayers specifically. I've been telling you that the world has been flooding like crazy. One of the big ones that just got slammed is the Southeast Asia. Death toll in Southeast Asia floods is over 300 people with extensive damage that is just, they're still trying to figure it out. So if we keep track, it says Indonesia, days of devastating floods across Southeast Asia have killed more than 300 people in Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, authorities said on Friday, November 28th. Heavy monsoon season rains paired with tropical storm systems inundated areas, with 3 countries stranding residents on rooftops and cutting off entire communities. Authorities in Indonesia were struggling to reach the worst affected areas on Sumatra Island, while authorities at a southern Thailand hospital brought in refrigerated trucks to store bodies after the morgue exceeded capacity. So we've covered a few of these storms that have been hitting these regions, but just as a collective, it's done some serious damage over there. So if you guys can please keep these people in your prayers, not only for losing family members, but for those who just lost all material items as well. So please continue to keep them in your prayers. We also have this one. This also was November 28th. Sri Lanka deploys troops as floodwaters rise. Death toll hits 56. And you guys can see how much flooding is happening. Can I make that a little bigger? There we go. You guys can see the flooding that's going on in Sri Lanka right now. It's already a poverty region, but then you add this on top of it, and it just makes things worse. Sri Lanka deployed the military for relief and rescue operations on Fridays. The death toll from floods and landslides across the island rose to 56, with another 21 people missing. Hopefully, all 21 of them are found and alive. Hopefully. Helicopters, Navy boats, and thousands of troops are being used to evacuate stranded villagers in several parts of the country, the Disaster Management Center said. Rain was falling across the island's entire 65,000 square kilometer area, with some regions receiving 360 millimeters in the past 24 hours. The Kalani River, which flows into the Indian Ocean near the capital, Colombo, was expected to breach its banks later on Friday, and residents were warned to move to higher ground. And we can see the damage and devastation of Sri Lanka. So please continue to keep them in your prayers as well, or add them to your prayer list this week. As you know, these things are they have been, they've been getting worse, but they're going to continue to get worse. And so we just need to continue to keep these people in your prayers, even if you can't think of it individually. I know there's a lot of people out there that like to do the whole, shame of prayer. You need to be as specific as possible and stuff like that, as if the Holy Spirit who intercedes for us doesn't know what is going on and can communicate properly. Just one of those things, even if you just add it to your prayer of just praying for the flood victims across the world. That's what the Holy Spirit's there for. He's there to intercede. He's got the information. He knows what you're communicating, and he'll translate it for the Lord. And that's one of the incredible, it's a benefit, incredible benefit of the supernatural prayer and interceding of the Holy Spirit. So awesome stuff. So please keep them in your prayers as far as that goes. All right. Let's see here. All right. Give me 1 second. That is Yeah, that's in the right order. Okay. I thought I had something out of order. All right, let's go ahead and get into all of this jazz, shall we? This is going to be fun. So we're just going to start off with this announcement that just came out today, and it'll lead us into everything else because we must start with the Venezuela situation. So we got Trump tells airlines Venezuela's airspace is closed in its entirety. In the latest escalation, Venezuela's government said it forcefully rejects Trump's claims about closing the airspace, which has turned out via any airline trackers that you guys pay attention to. The entire region of Venezuela is being avoided by airplanes. There's no planes in the air in Venezuela as of now. So this did take effect. President Donald Trump said Saturday morning that Venezuela's airspace should be considered closed as he wants to weigh military action against the South American nation. To all airlines, this is what he posted on his True Social. To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. Of course, in all caps, because he's one of those people that likes to shout in his text. Venezuela's government said it forcefully rejects Trump's claim about closing the airspace and that it was a colonial threat intended to undermine the country's territorial integrity, aeronautical security, and full sovereignty. It says a number of airlines began rerouting flights away from Venezuela's airspace earlier this month, and the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has issued a warning of heightened military activity in the area. So what that's referencing, we didn't talk about it because at the time it really wasn't needed to be talked about, where there was an issue by the Trump administration saying that all basically private flights and all travel via public airlines, which they're not really public, they're private. We're not going to get into that conversation. Need to be halted in Venezuela, which for the most part it did. The only planes that were traveling out of Venezuela to the United States had to do with cargo at that point because there wasn't an issue. There wasn't a warning issued on those. Then following that, according to Today, not only was this basically extending that, saying all cargo planes need to stop as well, but then this was just a full-on worldwide issue of no planes should be going into the Venezuela airspace, and that took effect. On Wednesday, Venezuela's Civil Aviation Authority stripped takeoff and landing rights from 6 commercial carriers, and accused of joining the actions of state terrorism promoted by the United States government, unilaterally suspending all commercial operations. On Thursday, Trump said that the U.S. could very soon begin targeting alleged Venezuela drug traffickers on land, expanding operations that have so far focused on vessels in the Caribbean Sea. That is one that we've been hearing thrown about for about a month and a half now. We've heard it twice, thrice, somewhere in there, twice, 3 times. I think it's twice total, like official announcements about the possibility of going in by land, because we heard about the CIA was already in there. We already knew that. And then there was 1 and 2, I think there was 2 total, talking about possibly going in by land, either through Mexico or by boat onto beaches. So we'll see. They're throwing that around again. We'll see if they actually plan on doing that or not. But obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with Venezuela. With the Maduro situation, we covered 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, somewhere in there, about the Machado lady, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who has come out and said if you give her control of Venezuela, then she'll be able to sell off like $1.3 trillion worth of oil and minerals and all that type of stuff to U.S. private contractors. And then you go through her history, and she was funded by the CIA going back to 2002, was involved with Bush and Obama and Trump and Biden. She started doing coups and revolutions in Venezuela and everything. I got a video on that. Make sure you guys go check that out if you haven't. That'll probably give you a lot of information about what's been happening with Venezuela. But for today, we're just going to focus on the drug situation because bust out the popcorn, because this is a giant hypocritical theater situation happening. And so that starts here, which is a report that came out November 28th and says Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike. Officials say kill them all. As 2 men clung to a stricken burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6, the Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's order to leave no survivors. And so this is one of those things where Mr. Hegseth, or Keg Breath, whatever you want to column has come in and said, we're going to bring back the violence, we're going to bring back the aggression, we're going to bring back the intimidation, and we're going to start doing things illegally. I just saw recently that in one of his writings in 2024, he asked the question of what even is the Geneva Convention, which is interesting because that's exactly how he's running his department, if it's his at all anyways. But basically what they're talking about is he came in, and at the start of this thing, September 2nd, the first strike that happened, he ordered a double tap, basically kill them all situation. So fire once, if you see anybody alive, fire again till they're dead. And so that's what they're covering in this. It says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken directive. According to two people with direct knowledge of the operation, the order was to kill everybody. One of them said, missile screamed off the Trinidad coast, striking the vessel and igniting a blaze from the bow to the stern. For minutes, commanders watched the boat burning on a live drone feed. As the smoke cleared, they got a jolt. Two survivors were clinging to the smoldering wreck. Special Operations Commander overseeing the September 2nd attack, the opening salvo in the Trump administration's war on suspected drug traffickers in the Western Hemisphere, ordered a second strike to comply with Hegseth's orders or instructions. Two people familiar with the matter said the two men were blown apart in the water. Some current and former U.S. officials and law of war experts have said that the Pentagon's lethal campaign, which has killed more than 80 people to date, is unlawful and may expose those directly involved to future prosecution. Now, this is something that we've covered a lot recently because we know that there has been a massive turnover of lawyers within the Pentagon and the Department of Defense who came out against the boat strike, saying that they believe that it could in fact be illegal and people in the future could be prosecuted and sent to jail, which nobody goes to jail. Everybody knows that, but still, that these lawyers came out, and these are the lawyers that sit on these councils in the Pentagon. They don't make decisions, but they go over the legality of things and give it to those who do make decisions, and then they base everything upon that. Well, the problem is we know with this administration, if you're not playing by their agenda, they don't even want you there. Pretty much 90% of the lawyers were then kicked out. They were sent out and fired because they were saying that this is going to be illegal. And then like 10% managed to get redirected to various aspects within the Pentagon, which has nothing to do with being on a council or sending warning or anything. This also goes along with the whole information about the 6 congressmen. All of them are veterans in some way, shape, or form, who said if you're a troop, you, by the Constitution, are not required to follow an unlawful order, which is completely 100% true. Now, Trump wants to go after those people because they're saying that they're causing dissident and all these types of things, which is completely false. They're just reciting what the Constitution said. And then we also know that like a month later after this, the 4-star Admiral Halsey, I believe his name is, Alvin Halsey, he basically put in his retirement papers because he doesn't agree with this, and he's been at war with Hegseth over all this stuff, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. I believe he'll officially be gone on December 12th. That's when that takes effect. So basically what we got going on is we got a whole stack of evidence that's saying this is illegal, or let's just say it what it is. It's murder. Hegseth issued a murder order to the military, and those involved with the military murdered those people. That's what's been going on. It also says the alleged traffickers pose no imminent threat of attack against the United States and are not, as the Trump administration has tried to argue, in an armed conflict with the United States. These officials and experts say because there's no legitimate war between the two sides, killing any of the men in the boats amounts to murder. Said Todd Huntley, a former military lawyer who advised Special Operations Forces for 7 years at the height of the U.S. counterterrorism campaign. Even if the U.S. were at war with the traffickers, in order to kill all the boat's occupants, if they were no longer able to fight, would in essence be in order to show no quarter, which would be a war crime. This report is based on interviews with accounts from 7 people with knowledge of the September 2nd attack and overall operation. The thing is, and if you want to take this from what should be considered like actual wartime due process as well as constitutional due process, is if you fired that shot and you blew up the boat and there's 2 survivors, you should have gone, picked them up, brought them into the country, and then gave them due process and interrogated them and got information and stuff like that. But they didn't do that. What did they do? They just murdered them because they realized that if they brought them in, there's a chance that their story may actually get out and it would prove to be unlawful and war crime. The elite counter-terror group SEAL Team 6, everybody knows about SEAL Team 6, right? Led the attack according to 4 people with direct knowledge of the matter who spoke on the condition of being anonymous because of the ongoing sensitive operations. Commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg, you're going to want to hold on to that name because it's going to be a recurring theme from here all the way to the end. So hang on to that. The commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Adam Frank M. Mitch Bradley, told people in the secure conference call that the survivors were still legitimate targets because they could theoretically call on other traffickers to retrieve them from their cargo. According to 2 people, he ordered the second kill strike to fulfill Hegseth's directive that everyone must be killed. It says also at the time of the September 2nd strike, Bradley headed Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC, tasked with the military's most sensitive and dangerous missions, often working with counterparts in the CIA. JSOC, those that come out of the Joint Special Operations Command, they're connected to the Fort Bragg situation, but they're also connected heavily and working with the CIA. We'll get to more connections on that. They're also heavily involved with other task force all around the world. They've done a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to Middle East stuff as well. They also plug into the Mossad network as well when it comes to that as well. So this is JSOC, this is CIA, this is Mossad, this is other assets in other countries that they work with. It's a giant monster, to say the least. It is a monster and a beast in itself. There's a lot of stuff there, but I think we're getting the idea of what's happening here. Yeah, this is a situation where stuff is starting to come out and things are starting to come out. Now, we heard a couple responses from 2 people, including Hegseth and then Sean Parnell, who's he's a communicator for the Pentagon. He's a spokesperson that's and a decision maker within there. And both of them have come out and called this report fake news. And, you know, the usual stuff of the media is lying and they're doing this and they're doing that. But neither one actually denied the claim that Hegseth gave the kill all order. They refused to actually deny that. And so everybody knows a non-denial is not a denial. So that's something to keep in mind. They probably had lawyers come out and say, don't deny it. Do everything that you can to dance around it, but don't deny it, because if you deny it, that could be another strike with possible litigation in the future. So there's the whole legality situation there. Now, why this is important, because I don't know if people saw this, because this has been flying under the radar lately. ICC, or International Criminal Court, judges reject requests to release former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. Prosecutors at the ICC say Duterte was involved in dozens of killings as part of his so-called war on drugs when in office, first as the mayor of the southern city and later as a president. He is looking at a 45-year term within ICC prison for doing the exact same thing that Donald Trump is doing right now. I kid you not. This came out November 28th of this year. It says former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte will remain in detention at the International Criminal Court after appeals judges on Friday rejected a request to release him on health grounds. The octogenarian is facing charges of crimes against humanity for his alleged involvement in dozens of killings as part of his so-called war on drugs when in office. According to court filings, Duterte instructed and authorized violent acts, including murder, to be committed against alleged criminals, including alleged drug dealers and users. The charges against him date from November 1st, 2011, when he was still mayor of the southern city of Davao, we'll just say that, to March 16th, 2019, when the country withdrew from the court. Estimates of the death toll during Duterte's president's term vary. National police put the figure at more than 6,000, while human rights groups claim up to 30,000. That's a he said, she said situation there. Families of victims hailed Duterte's arrest in March. So it's one of those things where he's literally looking at a 45. I think it's 45. I could be wrong. I could be getting that number mixed up. Either way, he's sitting in criminal court for crimes against humanity for doing legitimately the exact same thing that Donald Trump is doing right now. Alleged drug dealers, just bombing them, killing them, murdering them, just because. No due process, no international regulation involved or anything. He's just killing people. And so that's pretty fascinating that we have this situation happening here. Now, I know some people, because They'll do everything they can to stay within that left-right paradigm, continue to support one side or the other, the red versus blue, Trump versus Biden, Kamala, whatever you want to do. They're going to sit there and go, well, he killed 6,000 people. Trump hasn't done that. He's only done 80. Well, the question is a life a life? A life is a life when it comes to abortion stuff, right? We don't agree with killing those people. So when it comes to alleged drug dealers, which again, there has not been any proof given that that's what they're doing of trafficking drugs to the United States. There's been none. So the fact is they require due process. So anybody who's going to argue that, your argument's invalid. But it is fascinating that this dude is getting sentenced for the exact same thing Trump is doing right now. Then on the heels of that, when you want to talk about hypocritical, when it comes to this, Trump says he plans to pardon former Honduran President Hernandez for 2024 drug trafficking sentence. But I thought the whole goal was to fight the drug trafficking, but now we're going to pardon somebody who was heavily involved with it. How involved with it was he? President Donald Trump said Friday that he will be pardoning former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who in 2024 was convicted for drug trafficking and weapons charges and sentenced to, there's the 45 years in prison. So my bad. I don't know about the Duarte dude. I don't know how much he's getting there, but 45 for this dude. My apologies. In March of last year, Hernandez was convicted in U.S. court of conspiring to import cocaine into the United States. He had served 2 terms as the leader of the Central American nation for roughly 10 million people. Now, some people are saying, well, this could just be a political hit. The leftists were trying to take this dude out when there was no proof about it. They went to trial. It was a jury-based trial, and there was a just extensive list of fact and evidence proving that he was involved with this, and he was convicted with a unanimous jury and sentenced accordingly. So keep that in mind when it comes to this. Jump down. It says the post was part of a broader message by Trump backing Nasri Tito Asfura for Honduras presidency, with Trump saying that the U.S. would be supportive of the country if he wins. We'll get to that in just a second. Asfura, 67, is making his second run for president for the Conservative National Party. He was a mayor of Tequisquibaki, I can't pronounce that. You guys can read it though. And has pledged to solve Honduras infrastructure needs, but he has previously been accused of embezzling public funds, allegations he denies. So not only is he involved with the cocaine trafficking, who he's also connected to a bigger network. We'll get to that. But he's also involved with embezzling public funds. Trump has framed Honduras election as trial for democracy, suggesting in a separate Truth Social post that as Asfura loses, the country would go the way of Venezuela and fall under the influence of that country's leader, Nicolas Maduro. So Maduro is there, I believe at this point, while Maduro is a creep and he's a criminal and he's all these bad things, I think right now he's playing the part of patsy in order to advance a lot of things forward right now. Now, when I say that, again, I'm not giving him any leeway or credit or anything. He's a scumbag. We're aware of that, but that doesn't mean they can't use a scumbag in order to move things forward. They did the same thing with Castro, if you want to take a look at that. Still a scumbag, but he was a patsy and for things to move forward on a bigger scale. They do it all the time. So we have this, who's Trump basically, he's being as hypocritical as possible, basically saying, we're just going to start killing all these drug traffickers. There's going to be no more drugs coming into the United States. We're at war with this. We're going to make this happen. But in order for me to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and pardon this dude who has helped traffic, I believe it's 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. And according to Trump's math that he used, because Trump's math is not math at all. Everybody knows that. His math is 2 + 2 = shoe. But he basically, according to the math that he does for drug use in the United States, 400 tons of cocaine would mean that this dude killed 5 million Americans. So we're going off of that. If we get a little bit more information, ex-Honduran president sentenced to 45 years for helping get tons of cocaine into the United States. A defiant former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, was sentenced in New York on Wednesday. This was back in 2024, in prison for teaming up with some bribe-paying drug traffickers for over a decade to ensure that 400 tons of cocaine made it to the United States. Judge P. Kevin Castile sentenced Hernandez to 45 years in a U.S. prison and fined him $8 million. A jury convicted him in March in Manhattan federal court after a 2-week trial, which was closely followed in his home country. In a lengthy, exemplarious statement interrupted several times by the judge, who repeatedly reminded him that this was not time to relitigate the trial, Hernandez portrayed himself as a hero of the anti-drug trafficking movement. Somebody else in the Trump administration believes that as well. We'll get to that in just a second. Who teamed up with American authorities under 3 U.S. presidential administrations to reduce drug imports. This is why this is important, because you know who those 3 were? They were the last 3, which includes both left and right administrations, left and right presidents. Why is that important? Because we don't follow the left-right paradigm. This isn't a Republican and a Democrat situation. This is a corrupt government situation. And doesn't matter who's sitting in presidency, they're hand-selected, they're placed in the government, they're part of the cabal. Remember, there is no deep state, because that would give us the idea that there's a regular state that actually cares about us. They don't care about us. The deep state is just the state. It's just the people in power. It's just those who are following orders from satanic people. And so that's why this is important. That's why we recognize this. That's why we don't follow the left-right paradigm. It's just who they are. But the judge said trial evidence proved the opposite, and that Hernandez employed considerable acting skills to make it seem that he was an anti-drug trafficking crusader, while he deployed his nation's police and military when necessary to protect the drug trade. U.S. prosecutors say Hernandez worked with drug traffickers as long ago as 2004. That's, 3 years after the war on drugs began in the Middle East. Important. Keep that nugget in your head. Taking millions of dollars in bribes as he rose from rural congressman to president of the National Congress and then to the country's highest office. Hernandez acknowledged in trial testimony that drug money was paid to virtually all political parties in Honduras, but he denied accepting bribes to himself. So basically that's what he's standing there saying. All of those guys, all of them, they all took money, but I didn't. That's what he's claiming. That's his argument. Pretty terrible argument, in my opinion, on that. Worth noting that he's part of the right wing, they call it the right wing National Party, which is heavily connected to a certain cartel that, again, we'll get to in just a second. Now, if we take a look at this, adding on to it, let's take a look at Juan's brother, shall we? Former Honduras Congressman Tony Hernandez sentenced to life in prison and ordered to forfeit $138.5 million for distributing 185 tons of cocaine and related firearms and false statement offenses. Hernandez participated in the importation of at least 185,000 kilograms of cocaine, secured millions of dollars in bribes to Honduran officials, used heavily armed security, including members of the Honduras military and national police, and coordinated 2 killings, 2 murders. It gets cut off, but that's what that is. It says Juan Antonio Hernandez Alvarado, or Tony Hernandez, is the former Honduras congressman and brother of Juan Orlando Hernandez, the current president of Honduras. Well, not anymore. He's looking to get pardoned by Trump. Hernandez played a leadership role in a violent state-sponsored drug trafficking conspiracy. Over a 15-year period, Hernandez manufactured and distributed at least 185,000 kilograms of cocaine that was imported into the United States. Hernandez commanded heavily armed members of the Honduras military and Honduras National Police. He sold machine guns and ammunition to drug traffickers, some of which he obtained from the Honduras military. He controlled cocaine laboratories in Colombia and Honduras. He secured millions of dollars of drug proceeds for the Honduras National Party campaigns. Keep that in mind, National Party campaigns in connection with presidential elections in 2009, 2013, 2017, and he helped cause at least 2 murders. Hernandez made at least $138.5 million through his drug trafficking activities, money he was ordered to forfeit in connection with today's sentencing. Again, that was in 2021 that he was sentenced as well. You guys following along with this so far? So just in case I don't lose anybody, we're at this point now where Hegseth gave a kill order to just kill all alleged drug traffickers in boats from Venezuela. That's a part of his idea of the Trump administration's idea of cleaning house when it comes to drug trafficking. And so in response to that, Trump is coming out and said he's going to go ahead and pardon the former president of Honduras, who was involved with 400 tons of cocaine getting into the United States. Then on top of that, he's connected to his brother, Tony Hernandez, who's involved with the same thing, but with a bunch of other stuff when it comes to weapons, gun running, and murders, and all this type of stuff as well. So Trump is being as hypocritical as possible, saying we're going to kill all drug trafficking, and at the same time, he's protecting drug trafficking. We good? We following along? I hope so. Goes deeper than that. Let's keep going, shall we? Alleged narco president hires GOP lobbyist to sing his praises in Washington. This is April 8th, 2021. Everybody recognizes that dude's mug, right? Yeah. In April 2018, Florida Senator Marco Rubio tweeted out, "Thanks to Honduras President Juan Orlando Hernandez for targeting drug traffickers." Let's just see. Yep, there it is, Marco Rubio. This was April 14th, 2018. There they are. Just met with President Hernandez and former Minister Lara of Honduras. Thank them for their support of the U.S. and Israel at the UN and targeting drug traffickers, basically making him out to be something that he actually isn't. It says, but one drug trafficker the Honduras president never pursued was his own brother, Juan Antonio Hernandez, or Tony Hernandez, who was sentenced to life in prison March 30th in New York and trafficking tons of cocaine to the United States for over 14 years. Testimony during the 2019 trial suggested that the president did more than simply turn a blind eye to his brother's criminal enterprise. Witnesses allege that he was an essential part of it, accepting bribes to support his campaign for Congress and the presidency in exchange for protecting drug traffickers, which was proven in court with extensive evidence, and he was convicted by jury. It also says, but he also turned to friends of Republican Rubio for help. Early last year, he signed a deal. This again was in 2021. He signed a deal with the Washington lobby firm called BGR Group to buttress his image as a dedicated ally and implacable foe of organized crime. Although BGR represents itself as a bipartisan firm, it has extricable ties to the Republican Party. The company was co-founded by former Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour. Its current team includes prominent Republicans such as former Representative Sean Duffy. Hey, isn't he involved with the transportation side of the Trump administration now? Wisconsin Republican and Trump administration State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert, who is on the firm's advisory board. BGR has also given more than $1 million to candidates for federal office in each of the last 3 election cycles, and roughly 90% of its contributions going to Republicans. Rubio is among the top beneficiaries of BGR generosity and was benefited from the company's largesse throughout his career, including BGR hosted fundraisers during both his 2010 and 2016 Senate campaigns and his short-lived presidential bid. So basically what this president did, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who Trump's trying to pardon right now, is during all of this stuff that was going on when he was getting accused, he hired the BGR Group, and the BGR Group is a lobbyist for the Republican Party and has sent donations straight to Marco Rubio, which Marco Rubio, as we can see right here, was praising Juan Orlando for doing that. If you want verifiable proof, here's the BGR Group announcement saying, "We are delighted that the government of Honduras has agreed to retain the BGR Group. Please accept this letter of agreement." And so this was basically saying that they will work in his stead. And on top of that, if you take a look at the recipients of the BGR donations, Marco Rubio individually listed as a candidate that they gave money to. The corruption keeps going. It just goes deep and deep and deep, deeper and deeper and deeper. Doesn't stop. It just keeps going. It's just total corruption because everybody knows total power corrupts absolutely, or absolute power corrupts absolutely. You guys have heard all that stuff as well. The fact is, when you're in government, it's just corruption. It's just straight corruption. You're taking bribes. You're doing favors for friends. You're getting people off the hook. You can be a hypocrite and so on and so forth. But as long as you're part of that cult of personality, as long as you're leading the charge in the face of the left-right paradigm, doesn't matter. Your cult following will continue to follow you like a cult, as they always have. And we stand heavily against that on this channel. For the regulars around here, you guys know that. For the new people around here, that's why we talk about some of the stuff that we do. We don't like to look at stuff biasedly. We don't like to look at stuff like that. We're not on the field playing the game. We're in the stands next to Jesus eating the popcorn. And we got to remember that. One of the people that also plays their part when it comes to propaganda, who is somehow, I don't know why, but he just is, quoted in churches and prophecy communities as being some type of upstanding source of information, is Roger Stone, who's a moron. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that because that's what he is. I had to censor this because he posted this today in response to somebody, because this was Trump's announcement that he was going to pardon Hernandez, some dude. I think he's from Texas. I don't actually know who that is, but I believe he's a Senate guy or representative from Texas, calling out the 400 tons of cocaine. And then Roger Stone says Hernandez was framed on the basis of the testimony of two convicted drug traffickers who the Biden Department of Justice released from prison in order to, in return for their false testimony. Something off, shorty. Yeah. So this is why I always talk about, make sure you guys are doing your own information, that you're checking the evidence and you're checking the facts and stuff like this. Because Roger Stone here, who pertains to the left side, to the right side of the left-right paradigm, is basically, it's just a lie. That is just a lie. Because if you actually look up what happened in that court case, I recommend that you guys go do the same thing. Don't take my word for it either. Go look it up. You'll realize that that is completely false. Hernandez was not framed. He was actually proven to be a part of it. The testimony of two convicted drug traffickers was only part of the giant list. I think there's 30 something in all who gave testimony that Hernandez was involved with the drug trafficking. And then he throws in the Biden DOJ for good measure to make sure that he fuels the political hatred for each side. Roger Stone is one of those people that I see referenced all the time when it comes to the Christian side of things in the prophecy community. I think Alex Newman promotes Roger Stone as well as some bastion of truth and hope and all that type of stuff, when Roger Stone, again, is proving that he can't be trusted. And, well, Alex Newman can't be trusted either. I've proven that several times on this channel. But again, this is just straight up lies. That's why we need to go after facts. That's why we need to go after evidence. That's why we need to go after information. Again, we can only do so much, though. And I got to stress that we can only do so much. There's so much information out there that's just false and unverifiable that we just have to sometimes accept the fact that we're not going to get the actual truth of what's going on. We can get ideas of it, but we can't necessarily say, I know this for a fact. And I think that's something that troubles a lot of people. I think that's something that people stumble with, because I've seen it so many times where somebody presents a theory, the person goes, that sounds good, and then they're talking to their friend and they're telling it like it's in a verifiable fact when it's not. And so we got to be careful that we don't do that. But in this case, we do have court documents and evidence that does say, yeah, Hernandez was involved with that. So let's just keep that in mind as we continue to look through everything that's happening. We still good? Are we all good? All right. Let's keep going. We also have this. This came out, what was this? This was May 14th of this year, 2025. It says cartel family members entered U.S. in deal with Trump administration. Mexican security chief confirms. Video showed the family members walking across the border from Tijuana with their suitcases to awaiting U.S. agents. It says Mexico security chief confirmed Tuesday that 17 family members of cartel leaders crossed into the United States last week as part of a deal between the son of the former head of the Sinaloa cartel. I told you we'd be getting to this. There's a connection there. And the Trump administration. It goes on to say that family members of Ovidio Guzman Lopez, who was extradited to the United States in 2023, had entered the United States. Guzman Lopez is one of the brothers left running a faction of the Sinaloa cartel after notorious capo Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was imprisoned by the United States. El Chapo. Why is this important? How is this connected? Well, if you guys want to take a look at and follow the breadcrumbs of how this all happens, is Juan Orlando Hernandez was helping run cocaine for El Chapo's drug trafficking network. El Chapo's drug trafficking network is the front-running network that's connected to Maduro's drug trafficking network. You guys following it now? That's where the trail leads. These three guys are connected. Juan Orlando Hernandez is connected to El Chapo. El Chapo is connected to Maduro. So Trump, who's out there saying that he's fighting the war on drugs and to kill all drug traffickers that's connected to Maduro in Venezuela, is basically releasing somebody who is involved with trafficking Maduro and Venezuela cocaine, which the cocaine doesn't come from Venezuela. It goes through Venezuela. The cocaine is not part of Venezuela drug trade. And you have that issue of those three people being connected. And so Trump, he's saying he's going after Maduro, but he's releasing people involved with Maduro's thing. And on top of that, earlier this year, he released 17 family members of the cartel into the United States. That goes against the whole immigration thing that he's been doing. I can't even begin to tell you how absolutely hypocritical, corrupt this is. Will you hear this on mainstream media? No. Will you hear this on the right-wing media? No. Will you hear this in the prophecy community? No. You won't. Because they don't care about the facts and the truth of what's going on. They don't care about the deception. Why? They have an agenda to promote. They have numbers they have to meet. They have subscribers and book sales to worry about. Is there anything? Yeah. Continuing on. He believed that this was the case because the former cartel boss, whose lawyer said in January he had entered negotiations with the U.S. authorities, had been pointing fingers at members of the criminal organizations, likely as part of the cooperation agreement. It is evident that the family is going to the United States because of a negotiation or an offer that the Department of Justice is giving him, Garcia Harfuch said, who's the journalist who reported on the exchange or the family situation that's happening there. Pointing fingers and cooperation agreement at the same time while we got something going on in Venezuela, which it has nothing to do with drug trafficking. Again, I cannot reiterate that enough. Has nothing to do with drugs. And then at the same time, you're pardoning a dude who's convicted for being involved with the same drug trafficking network that's connected to Maduro, which they just, we talked about this as well, but they just announced as being a foreign group, basically, that allows them to start declaring war on them and all that type of stuff as well. That whole cartel, which isn't actually a formal cartel, it's just a name that the United States put on them so they're able to issue an announcement about it. It just keeps going. So the connections don't end there. I hope I'm not losing you guys. There's a lot there. Let's just I should have done a picture with everybody's name and how they're connected. Hindsight's 2020, right? So let's get to the Tito Asfura guy who's running for president of Honduras, because he's been brought up, and I told you to hang on to that name. So this was released, posted by Donald Trump. This was yesterday. He said, if Tito Asfura wins the president of Honduras because the United States has so much confidence in him, his policies, and what he will do for the great people of Honduras, we will be very supportive. So we already got a problem here. This is international election interference. This actually breaks international law. Just imagine if another country did something like this to our elections here. Even though we know they're not elections, they're selections, you still got to play the game. These people play the game. Trump, he literally has the biggest platform, speaking platform in the world. President of the United States always has the biggest voice in the world. And he's basically saying, everybody in that country needs to support this guy if you want our help. That's just basic election interference. He already did it with mayor, which in New York, which that didn't work either. But again, we know that dude was selected anyways, but that's a different conversation. Let's stay on task here. So we got election interference happening here. It says if he doesn't win, the United States will not be throwing good money after bad, because a wrong leader can only bring catastrophic results to a country, no matter which country it is. Tito will be a great president, and the United States will work closely with him in order to ensure the success with all its potential of Honduras. Additionally, I will be granting a full and complete pardon to former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who has been, according to many people that I greatly respect, treated very harshly and unfairly. Now, he got convicted. That's what he did. This cannot be allowed to happen, especially now after Tito Asfura wins the election, when Honduras will be on its way to great political and financial success. Vote for Tito Asfura for president, and congratulations to Juan Orlando Hernandez on your upcoming pardon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make Honduras great again. Whatever. So he put that out there. Tito Asfura. Why? Let's just see. Just for fun, let's see what this dude's all about. Who is Nasri Aferdo, or Tito Asfura? The Trump-backed Honduras candidate of Palestinian origins. Pretty interesting, but something doesn't add up there either. We'll get to that in just a second. Since U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that he's backing Nasri Asfura of the Conservative National Party in Honduras' highly contested presidential race. I hope the people of Honduras vote for the freedom and democracy and elect Tito Asfura president, Trump said on Truth Social. A 67-year-old politician and businessman, Asfura is running for the presidency for the second consecutive time as the standard bearer of the National Party. National Party again. Aligned with the conservative right and whose past president Juan Orlando Hernandez, 2014 to 2022, is serving a sentence in the United States on drug trafficking charges. Why this is important? Because Juan Orlando Hernandez confirmed during the trial and said that all the congressmen, all those involved with the National Party of Honduras, is connected to the drug trafficking ring. And what is Trump doing? He is promoting the dude that is connected to the National Party. Does anybody see the logical problem there? I do. I certainly hope that you guys do as well. He's promoting the next front runner for the drug trafficking ring that's coming out of Honduras. It's connected to El Chapo's network, which is connected to Maduro's network, and on and on and on. The circus continues. It's as simple as that. Let's keep going. It says he's also under investigation, along with other former officials from his administration in the Capitol, for allegedly being part of a scheme to embezzle public funds and launder money. That has not been confirmed as far as I can see, so I can't sit there and say that's what he's doing or not, but there's been multiple people that have come forward and saying that's what this dude's a part of. He also has said private investment is necessary to move the country forward, and his political agenda is focusing on jobs, education, and security. The private investment involved with the public funds and money laundering. That's where that possible connection comes from on that as well. A couple other things that's pretty interesting in regards to this is Asfura, even though he is Palestinian origins, he's the one that's says that he wants to bring the support back to Israel, which is important when it comes to this stuff because one of the people that's been involved with the drug trafficking out of Honduras is actually one of the top officials from the Israeli embassy. So we have that connection there. Now, that's as far as that connection goes. I tried to follow that rabbit or line of breadcrumb, whatever you want to call it, and it just stopped there. The person got accused of it, and he was under investigation, and then all of a sudden, everything went radio silent. So you could either take that as either the investigation found nothing, and he's free of it, which could be, or Israeli intelligence got involved, and they just cut off everything there. Which that could also be a fact either, or that could also be a fact on that either. I don't know which one it is. I can't find out. I'll just leave it there. Again, that's one of those situations where we can't say we know for sure because we don't. So we just got to accept the fact that we're probably not going to figure that out. But so there's that connection there as well. So take with that what you will. Either way, this dude that Trump is promoting for Honduras is connected to the same drug trafficking ring as the other people. And so round and round it goes. Then we have this as well. This was posted yesterday by Pete Hegseth. This was right before or following the report about him issuing the kill order for the first boat strike. It says, we have only just begun to kill narco-terrorists, except when you're pardoning them from United States conviction for trafficking 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Except for them. We won't kill them. We'll pardon them. and promote the next one in Honduras as well. Make that make sense. I don't know. Do with that what you will. So that's the situation that's happening with the immediate drug trafficking issue that's currently happening with Venezuela and Honduras and all that. Why is this important? Why do we pay attention to this? Because the war on drugs has been a propaganda piece that's been going on for decades. I mean, decades. This stuff goes all the way back, man. You're talking 80s to 70s, 60s. The war on drugs has been going on since then. And it only started taking front page news, after 9/11, 2001, with all that stuff going on with 9/11, drug trafficking in Afghanistan, the terrorists in Afghanistan, all that type of stuff. That's when it started making front page news. And so the reason why this is important and the reason why I'm pointing out the hypocrisy and the corruption of the United States government has nothing to do with the fact of just going after one side or the other. That's why we don't look at it as the left-right paradigm. That's why we look at it as just the state. We don't look at the deep state because the deep state is just the state. That's why we look at it as a whole. We get rid of the paradigm, we get rid of the left-right, we get rid of the red and blue, we get rid of all those colors, and we just look at it as a centralized unit, because when it comes to drug trafficking, this is something that the United States government has been involved for a long time and will continue to be involved for a long time. It's one of the biggest money makers that the government has. And so it makes perfect sense why Trump was pardoned the same dude that's connected to the network that he claims that he's trying to kill in Venezuela. So if we go back in history, we have this. This is going all the way back to Afghanistan. Marines ignore opium, Taliban's cash crop. Marines in Afghanistan are not destroying poppy plants. In fact, they are reassuring villagers and plants won't be touched. This is 2008. It says the Marines of Bravo Company's 1st platoon sleep beside a grove of poppies. Troops in the 2nd platoon playfully swat at the heavy opium bulbs while walking through the fields. Afghan laborers scraping the plant's gooey resin smile and wave. The 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit moved into the southern Helmand province, the world's largest opium poppy growing region, and now finds themselves surrounded by green fields of the illegal plants that produce the main ingredient of heroin. Heroin. Keep in mind, heroin. This is back in the early 2000s. Poppy fields in Afghanistan for heroin. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. It says the Taliban, whose fighters are exchanging daily fire with the Marines in Garmsur, derives up to $100 million a year from the poppy harvest by taxing farmers and charging safe passage fees, money that will buy weapons to use against U.S., NATO, and Afghan troops. Yet the Marines are not destroying the plants. In fact, they are reassuring villagers the puppies won't be touched. American commanders say that the Marines would only alienate people and drive them to take up arms if they eliminated the impoverished Afghans' only source of income. It's kind of weird. We're coming over here to fight the Taliban. We see this. We know it's bad, but at the same time, we know it's the only way locals make money, said First Lieutenant Adam Lynch, 27 of Barnstable, Massachusetts. Why is this important? Because United States Marines, the United States military, who is connected to CIA units in Afghanistan during this time, were not there to destroy the opium that was getting flooded into the United States via heroin. No, they were there to protect the fields that were producing opium or harvesting opium to produce heroin that was flooding into the United States. The reason why this is making so much money and the reason why they were protecting it is because this is during the height of the opium situation in the United States that was through heroin specifically. And so the money that these Afghanis were making, that they were harvesting, sending it to the smugglers who were connected to the Taliban. And if you know anything about the Taliban was funded and armed through the CIA back in the 80s, if you want to take a look at that. I've talked about that in the past. And so what was going on was the money that the CIA was giving to the Taliban was to buy the heroin to ship into the United States. And then as it was being distributed, the CIA was making tenfold what they were giving to the Taliban. And the United States military was guarding those fields. The very same fields that produced opium that killed how many millions of Americans? If you're one of those people that didn't know anything about that, your bubble just popped. Go look it up. Don't take my word for it. Go take a look. This is just one situation in decades of what's been going on. And you're telling me that the CIA is not doing the same thing with Honduras, with Venezuela? Mexico is the key. We'll get to that in just a second. Continuing on with this, it says, in the poppy fields, 100 feet from the 2nd Platoon's headquarters, 3 Afghan brothers scraped opium resin over the weekend. The youngest 23-year-old Sardar said his family would earn little money from the harvest. We receive money from the shopkeepers, then they will sell it, said Sadhar, who is afraid to give his last name. We don't have enough money to buy flour for our families. The smugglers make the money, added Sardar, who worked alongside his 11-year-old son just 20 yards from a Marine guard post, its guns pointed across the field. Afghanistan supplies some 93% of the world's opium, this was back in 2008, used to make heroin. And the Taliban militants earned up to $100 million from the drug trade. The United States estimates And the Taliban militants earned up to $100 million from the drug trade, says the United Nations. The export value of this harvest was $4 billion, more than a third of the country's combined gross domestic product. Now, if we get a little bit more numbers on what's going on here, jump over here. Afghanistan's opium business boomed under U.S. occupation. We just covered why. This was August 20th, 2021. This is before the U.S. invaded Afghanistan in 2001. Around 82,000 hectares of Afghanistan cultivated poppy, the plant that produces opium, which can be turned into heroin and other opiates. United Nations and U.S. estimates put the current poppy crop at around 224,000 hectares, according to the United Nations. That number's up 37% from 2019. The U.S. spends $8 billion trying to eradicate the plant in Afghanistan. We know that that's a lie, only to watch it as it became the most profitable crop the country produced. So that $8 billion wasn't trying to eradicate it. That $8 billion was there to keep it going because they were making bank off of it. Afghanistan now produces 82% of the world's supply, according to the United Nations. Again, this was back in 2022. Like other U.S. efforts in Afghanistan and separately the war on drugs, the war against poppy is a complete and utter failure. No, it's not according to what they were actually doing. Not only did the Pentagon fail to eradicate the drug-producing plant, it created the perfect conditions for it to flourish. It says to produce opium in payable quantities, you need either a really effective government or you need to pay a lot of people to look the other way. Brazier said, our invasion created conditions for both. We destabilized the government and pumped billions of dollars into the country. There was plenty of ready cash around to pay off the people producers needed to pay off to look the other way. Yes. Because that's how the world works. Let's keep going, shall we? We're not done. Karzai's brother said to be on CIA payroll. This was October 27th, 2009. Says the brother of Afghan President Hamid Karzai has been getting regular payments from the Central Intelligence Agency, the New York Times reported on Tuesday, citing current and former U.S. officials. Ahmed Wali Karzai is a suspected player in Afghanistan's opium trade and has been paid by the CIA over the last 8 years for services that include helping to recruit an Afghan paramilitary force that operates at the CIA's direction in and around the southern city of Kandahar. Ahmed Wali Karzai said in an interview that he cooperates with the United States civilian and military officials, but does not engage in the drug trade and does not receive payments from the CIA. The CIA neither confirmed nor denied the reported payments. Confirmed nor denied basically confirms. We can't, again, say that as fact, but that's usually how it goes. And it says no intelligence organization worth a name would ever entertain these kinds of allegations, the CIA spokesman said. So the brother of the dude who's involved with it is saying that he's been working with it, but he's not involved, but his brother is. That's basically what he's saying. Says the CIA's practice also suggests that the United States is not doing everything in its power to stamp out the lucrative Afghan drug trade, a major source of revenue for the Taliban, the Times said. In addition, some U.S. officials argue that the reliance on Ahmad Wali Karzai undermines the push to develop effective central government that would eventually allow the United States to withdraw. And of course, we know that they're all connected in establishing a faulty government, funding the faulty government in order to make bank through many different things. Drugs is just one of it, but there's the military-industrial complex. There's the minerals that they were mining in the country. There's the gold situation that was happening there. There's a bunch of stuff, but let's stick on drugs because that's where we're at right now. But the fact is if you guys want to take a look at what's really going on with this, because the dates of this is important. You know how we just pulled out with that failed military attempt or the failed military withdrawal from Afghanistan during the Biden administration, which was actually negotiated by the Trump administration and then fulfilled by the Biden administration. That's important to realize because, again, they're one and the same. There's no left-right paradigm. It was all a deal. Part of that deal had to do with the fact that the heroin drug trade had switched. It was still opium, but when that withdrawal happened, we had a switch of a drug problem in the United States. Anybody remember what opium in the early 2020s started taking over the United States? It wasn't heroin. It was fentanyl. Fentanyl started to take over the United States. People were done with the heroin. They started going fentanyl. The problem is the poppies in Afghanistan aren't used for fentanyl. No, fentanyl is created in Mexico. And so that got switched over to Mexico because the CIA is now funneling the fentanyl into the United States. And so they withdrew from Afghanistan because they didn't need those poppy fields anymore. CIA is the biggest drug runners in the world. It's clear as day if you're willing to look for it. Now, let's take a look at this. More than a dozen special operations soldiers at Center of Drug Trafficking probe. Just keeps going. At least 13 soldiers assigned to the U.S. Army Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg. There it is. I told you to hang on to Fort Bragg. It's going to be a recurring theme all the way to the end. This was 2023. At least 13 soldiers assigned to the U.S. Army Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, are under investigation for drug trafficking. Fort Bragg is in so-called Corridor H, a designation from the Department of Justice of 8 different parts of the country in which drugs, particularly fentanyl, are heavily trafficked. Since 2015, there has been at least 16 drug overdose deaths at Fort Bragg, according to an internal Army documents reviewed by military.com. Of that, at least 2 were juror-enlisted soldiers training to become Green Berets who overdosed on cocaine laced with fentanyl. Deadly drug overdoses have spiked across the country since 2019, largely due to the introduction of fentanyl. About the same time that we withdrew from Afghanistan. I told you, timeline fits. The pieces fit. Deadly drug overdoses have spiked across the country since 2019, largely due to the introduction of fentanyl, a cheap synthetic opioid that is often mixed with other drugs. And again, the main place that it comes from is Mexico. In 2020, there were 91,799 drug overdose deaths in the United States, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And an internal review of Special Operations Command conducted in 2019 found severe issues with the ethics in the community, finding that the culture of elite units' extreme focus on mission accomplishments follows misconduct and unethical behavior to often go unchecked. There's also something else that sits at Fort Bragg that we'll get to at the very end of this thing. So like I said, hang on to that and we will get to it. Let's get a little bit more numbers on what's going on with Fort Bragg and the drug trafficking situation. This is coming from this year, 2025, how elite special operations troops created a drug cartel, a bizarre criminal conspiracy in the ranks of the United States Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg. Again, JSOC. We talked about them. Who are they connected to? They're connected to the CIA. They're connected to the Mossad, and they're connected to the other groups, informants and whatnot in other countries that they work with. So again, it's a big network of people. It says, despite the drug war, U.S. intelligence agency have sometimes made common cause with rebel forces or client states that dealt in narcotics. Alfred McCoy's bombshell 1972 book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, exposed opium-fueled proxy warfare in Vietnam and Laos. You know how I've said on this channel, if you've been around, you guys have heard me say this, that the whole Vietnam War, we never should have been there. It wasn't a real war to begin with. Ba-boom. That's why, well, one of the reasons why it's not always just about drugs. There's other things too. But the reason why we got involved with the Vietnam War is because it had everything. In this case, it had to do with drugs. That's why that's the whole thing. So all the people, and I'm not laughing at the situation. I hope you guys realize that. But the whole situation of how we lost how many soldiers during Vietnam had nothing to do with fighting for freedom. All those people died, and I know people who had family members die in Vietnam. They died for drugs. When you look at the Afghanistan war, they died for drugs, oil, gold, and money. It's hard because there's people who have family members in the military right now. And sometimes it's hard to hear that these wars that we're fighting have nothing to do with freedom. We continue to get fed that idea has nothing to do with freedom. Most of them die for personal gain of the politicians. And that's it. And in this case, Vietnam had everything to do with drugs. All those U.S. soldiers died to protect a drug trafficking network built by the CIA. It's hard to hear. But if you look into it, you'll see it. I think it's important that we hear that, honestly, especially for those who don't want to believe it, because when you finally realize it and accept it, it's just another finger letting go of this earth. And it's another step towards wanting to go home and being with Jesus. So in 1972, the book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, exposed opium-fueled proxy warfare in Vietnam and Laos, embarrassing the CIA. The Kerry Committee reported in 1989 did the same for the cocaine-funded operations in Nicaragua. Similar reports popped up through the long U.S. engagement in Afghanistan. U.S. troops themselves running a smuggling ring inside of America. Throughout the early 2020s, there was a wave of disturbing crimes related to the shadowy Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. HARP demonstrates that the government officials turned a blind eye as JSOC operators stole, killed, raped, and smuggled, shielding them from both the military and civilian justice. Why? Because good money coming through there. This is former U.S. military quartermaster Timothy Dumas and former police Freddie Wayne Huff were leading a criminal enterprise that brought together JSOC operators, the local redneck mafia, Puerto Rican smugglers, Los Zetas of Mexico, and even a former Islamic State fighter. Huff spoke freely to HARP about his crimes and his military connection from the cell in a federal penitentiary. He was the lucky one. Dumas, who had threatened to expose a giant criminal operation within JSOC, was murdered in the woods outside Fort Bragg alongside active duty Delta Force soldiers, our soldier Sergeant William Levine, in December of 2020. We actually covered that a couple years ago. We talked about that because there's a string of murders surrounding Fort Bragg. Although police have charged a local career criminal for their deaths, a patsy, every local that HARP spoke to was skeptical that the government had the right man. Many of them implied that there was a larger conspiracy. They killed him. From late 2020 through early 2023, 12 Fort Bragg soldiers were murdered or accused of murder, and some of these cases remained unsolved. The most infamous case might be the murder of Spec Ops Enrique Roman Hernandez, suspected of selling LSD. He disappeared in May 2020 during a camping trip. A few days later, Roman Martinez's decapitated head washed up on a beach. The case is still completely cold. Yeah, nobody's figuring that one out. Because this is how this whole network works. Drugs and money and conspiracy and human trafficking, child trafficking, blackmail. I mean, we're just We are literally just looking at the tiniest tip of the iceberg of what really goes on with this stuff. And so I hope people are paying attention to how deep and corrupt this is. Again, this is just a tiny bit. And if this is how corrupt just this tiny little bit of this iceberg is, imagine everything else that's going on. You want to talk about lawlessness. You want to talk about corruption. You want to talk about the sick fact that you have pastors pounding their pulpits for political pundits and icons on Sunday morning to get their sheep to start following this stuff. These people either have no idea what it is and they're just following the narrative and saying what sounds good to get butts in the seats, or these people are aware of what's going on to a certain extent. They're on the payroll and they're built to be propagandists. There is no left-right. Your vote means nothing. These people are sick, hand-selected puppets to do the dirty work that like we're going over right now. And shame on all the those prophecy teachers that continue to just cover for this. All of a sudden, now that Trump's in here and all this corruption's coming out, they're dead silent on everything. Why? Because they got a propaganda policy that they've got to upkeep in order to keep the church as deceived as possible. Shame on you. Shame on you. And when somebody comes out and starts calling out what they're doing, start going after them. It's ridiculous. Sorry. Didn't mean to get all worked up, but I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm just tired of it. They're not prophecy teachers, they're propaganda teachers. They don't care about speaking the truth. They don't care about giving fact. They don't care about staying away from deception. They like deception. It's warm and comfortable. Deception is the warm bed on a snowy day that wraps around you with the fire going that keeps you nice and warm, tucked in, and feeling nice. I don't know. I'd rather be the one slogging it through the snow, seeing what's really going on. All right. So we got the drug side of this. The reason why we went over all of that is not only to connect what's going on with Venezuela, but it's also to show that this whole military CIA drug cartel is also connected to these private groups that are operating all over the world, whether it's Honduras, Venezuela, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Vietnam, Laos, whether it's Afghanistan, so on and so forth. They're all over the place. The network is working with all of them. Why that's important is because that kind of brings us to this situation that just happened. Now, I covered this a little bit on the Wretched Recap on Friday, but we're just going to go a little more in depth. Again, I don't have an answer as far as this story goes, so don't ask me why or for what reason, because I don't have one yet. This is a case that we still need to watch it unfold, and we may not actually get answers, but we still need to be aware of what's going on. And so this just happened. It was 2 National Guard members shot in an ambush attack just blocks from the White House. It says 2 West Virginia National Guard members who deployed to the nation's capital were shot Wednesday afternoon just blocks from the White House. It says the rare shooting of National Guard members on the day before Thanksgiving comes as the presence of the troops in the nation's capital and other cities around the country have been a flashpoint issue for months, fueling court fights and a broader public policy debate about the Trump administration's use of the military to combat what officials cast out as an out-of-control crime problem. As we know, or maybe you don't, but we talked about it on Friday, and I think we talked about this order that was on Tuesday, I think, where there was a judge that basically declared the deploying of National Guard in D.C. as unlawful. She gave the Trump administration 21 days to either remove them or to file an appeal. So during this period of time, the Trump administration either needed to withdraw them or place an appeal. It creates a window, and I'm just giving a theory. I'm just giving an idea. Again, take it with what you will. It gives the Trump administration a window to do something like this, which would basically say, see, told you that we needed to do it. And so they could not only keep them there, but extend it or expand it in some type of way. That's a possibility. That's all I'm saying is it's a possibility. Keep that in mind. It also says the initiative brought roughly 70. Did I skip some or something? Right here. This was supposed to be highlighted. This is the 29-year-old suspect, an Afghan national, entered the U.S. in 2021 through Operations Allies Welcome, a Biden administration program that evacuated and resettled tens of thousands of Afghans after the United States withdrawal from the country. This is the initiative brought roughly 76,000 people to the United States, many of whom had worked alongside U.S. troops and diplomats as interpreters and translators. That's the important thing. Many of whom had worked alongside U.S. troops and diplomats as interpreters and translators in that country. So there's a connection there to the network. It says the suspect who has been living in Washington State. I highlighted that and I wanted to bring that forward because the whole thing doesn't make sense if you look at it from just a logistical standpoint. This dude is in Washington, over on the Pacific coast, over there. And he decided he was going to drive from Washington, even though he has a family. It says Lockamal, that's the guy, arrived in Bellingham, Washington, around 79 miles north of Seattle with his wife and 5 children. So he's over in Washington. He's got a wife. He's got 5 children. He's been living here for years. We'll get into that a little bit later. He's been living here for years. And he decides now is the time to drive all the way to D.C. with a .357 handgun, a revolver, and just randomly walk up and shoot 2 National Guard members. Explain that one to me. Maybe there's mental illness, maybe there's something, I don't know. But if you're just looking at it from a logistical standpoint, makes no sense. Just keep that in mind. It says the Trump administration quickly ordered 500 more National Guard members to Washington, of course, expansion. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Trump asked him to send the troops. Nearly 2,200 troops currently are assigned to the Joint Task Force operating in the city, according to the government's latest website. Again, we're still in the window of you need to withdraw them or issue an appeal. So keep that in mind. Now, this is where things, again, just don't make sense. It says troops held down the shooter. The shooting happened roughly 2 blocks northwest of the White House near a metro station. Hearing gunfire, other troops in the area ran over and held down the gunman after he was shot. So, you're going to issue a double tap, kill them all order to random alleged drug traffickers in a boat off the coast of Venezuela. But when it comes to a guy on U.S. soil who shot 2 National Guardsmen, you're not going to kill him, but you're going to hold him down? Again, logic don't fly. I'll just leave it at that. Let's get a little bit more information. DC shooting suspect was granted asylum in April. Okay. Interesting. This is according to the New York Times and ABC News. Lockamal was granted asylum in April 2025 under President Donald Trump, who was blamed former President Joe Biden for Lockamal's entrance into the U.S. in 2021. So President Trump, and I've seen the video, he called a reporter stupid and screamed at her for asking the question. You guys can find the video if you want to. It's there. Who said, well, you're saying that he came in during Biden's thing, but yet your administration granted him official asylum. Your administration didn't do the vetting. So not only was he vetted, quote unquote, for the multiple years of working with the CIA over in Afghanistan, we'll get to that, for the multiple years there, then he needed to be vetted to actually come in during this situation, the Biden's welcome group thing. Can't think of the name of it. And then he needed, in order to be granted asylum and residence in the United States, he needed to be vetted then. That was your job. Why didn't you do that? So we've got this dude who managed to make it through the CIA, working through a CIA group in Afghanistan, welcomed in during the Biden administration, and then grant him asylum during the Trump administration. Again, left-right paradigm don't fly. It's all the same team. CIA Director John Ratcliffe said Thursday that Lockamal worked with the CIA-backed military units in Afghanistan. So even John Ratcliffe is confirming the dude worked with the CIA. While addressing the attacks on Wednesday night, President Donald Trump said the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan. Trump claimed he was flown into the United States by the Biden administration in September 2021, which is true. We know that. And his status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden. We know that too, likely referring to the Operations Allies Welcome, which allowed certain Afghan asylum seekers to remain in the U.S. for 2 years. So again, worked with the CIA, brought in by Biden, extended during Operations Allies Welcome, and then granted asylum April of this year. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem reiterated this on X, saying that Lakhanwal is an Afghan national who was one of the many unvetted mass paroled into the United States under Operation Allies Welcome. She is literally saying that he was unvetted. It was her administration that was supposed to vet him. She literally just dunked on herself, saying that they failed at their job. This is the Post. It says the suspect that shot our brave National Guardsman is an Afghan national who is the one of many unvetted mass paroled into the United States under Operations Ally Welcome on September 8, 2021, under the Biden administration. What are they doing? They're playing political theater. They're trying to get the sides to continue to be fired up at each other. They want the monkeys to continue to throw poo at each other. This is theater. This is the popcorn side of cocaine and popcorn. This is what I'm talking about. Don't get fooled by this. This is just government. It's just corruption. That's all it is. It's not left, right. It's not Democratic, Republican. It's not Trump, Biden. It is literally just government. That's why it's so important that we don't fall into it. It says the NBC report added that Lakhanwal served in the Afghan army for 10 years alongside U.S. Special Forces. That takes us back into Obama's stuff. So now it's Obama. Now it's Biden. Now it's Trump. Now it's all of them, all three of them. Lakhanwal had been stationed at a base in Kandahar, Afghanistan's second largest city, while serving in the country's army. The report added, citing Lakhanwal's relative, "We were the ones that were targeted by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Lakhanwal was a part of the paramilitary force that worked with the CIA, known as the Zero Unit, according to the New York Times. We'll get to them as well, which noted that units built a reputation for their brutality and were considered death squads by human rights groups. It's possible that Lakhanwal suffered from mental health issues and was disturbed by the casualties his unit has caused." Again, it's a possibility. We don't know. We don't know for sure what the situation was. So it's possible that was the case. It's possible that it was something else. I'm just giving you guys the information, and we go from there. We also have this. It says officials criticized Biden vetting, but Afghan shooting suspect was granted asylum under Trump. It says the Trump administration on Thursday blamed Biden-era vetting failures for the admission of the Afghan immigrant suspected of shooting two National Guard members in Washington, D.C., but the alleged gunman was granted asylum this year under President Donald Trump, according to U.S. government files seen by Reuters, and there's been other outlets that have confirmed that those files do indeed exist. FBI Director Kash Patel and Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, both Trump appointees, said during a press conference on Thursday that the Biden administration had failed to conduct adequate background checks or vetting on Lakhanwal before allowing him to enter the U.S. in 2021. Neither official provided any evidence to support their assertion. Again, we can just go with what we're being told there. Under the Operations Ally Program or Welcome Program, Afghans evacuated to the U.S. were granted a 2-year parole that allowed them to live and work legally and then apply for a more permanent status. The document reviewed said Lakhanwal applied for asylum in December of 2024 and was approved on April 23rd of this year, 3 months after Trump took office. Lakhanwal, 29, who resided in Washington state, had no known criminal history, the officials said. The government file in Lakhanwal said that he had been vetted by the U.S. because of his work with the U.S. government partners during the war in Afghanistan, with no potentially disqualifying information had been found. Now, maybe these people were involved with the drug trade happening in Afghanistan too. We don't necessarily know that, but it is interesting. It says this animal would have never been here if not for Joe Biden's dangerous policies, which allowed countless unvetted criminals to invade our country and harm the American people, said Abigail Jackson, a White House spokesperson. CIA Director John Ratcliffe said in a statement that Lochinwall had worked with the CIA-backed local units in Afghanistan. So again, they're just throwing shade at each other, going back and forth. It's their fault. Even though we were the one that were supposed to vet him to grant him asylum, it's their fault. Even though they're the ones that worked with the CIA, it's their fault. And so it's just more finger pointing going on there. We also have this. It says, DC shooting suspect could not tolerate the violence of a CIA-backed unit in Afghanistan, said a childhood friend. A CIA and an Afghan intelligence official said that the shooter had been part of the Afghan partner force known as the Zero Unit, trained and supported by the agency in the southern province of Kandahar. So again, we're just getting a recount from a friend. So again, take with it what you will. The Afghan refugee accused of shooting 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. fought in the late days of the United States war there as part of a Zero Unit, paramilitary force that worked with the CIA, according to a person briefed on the investigation and an Afghan intelligence officer familiar with the matter. The units were known for their brutality and labeled death squads by human rights groups. A childhood friend who asked to be identified only as Mohammed because he feared the Taliban reprisals, said that Mr. Lochinwall had suffered from mental health issues and was disturbed by the casualty his unit had caused. Members of the Zero Units were among the thousands of Afghans relocated to the United States under the Biden administration after the chaotic withdrawal of U.S. troops in August of 2021, which we know the drug trafficking trade ended there, and that's what caused this withdrawal. That's why we went through all that history, because it shows that all this stuff is connected. And it allowed the Taliban to retake control of the country, which again, you go back to the 80s, the Taliban was funded and established by the U.S. When the whole Afghan situation was happening. They were fighting the Soviets in the country. One of the operations that was going on, if you want to look up more information, it's called Operation Cyclone. Go take a look at that and you'll find out what was going on. It also says the CIA has denied the allegations of brutality among the units, saying that they were the result of the Taliban propaganda. Current and former officials say that the units played an important role in the American evacuation of Afghanistan. The units helped both the U.S. citizens and Afghan partners flee to the airport and get on the flights out of the country. So again, this is just being recalled from a friend. We can only do so much that we can with that. Take it with what you will. So let's learn about these Zero Units a little bit to get an idea of what's going on here. It says, what were the Afghan Zero Units that sources say the National Guard shooting suspect worked for? It says an image of an ID badge circulating widely online. You guys can find that. I don't have it to show you, but you can find it. Circulating widely online that shows that the suspect in the shooting of the National Guard members says he was assigned to the Kandahar Strike Force, or O3 unit, one of the number of so-called Zero Units that work closely with the United States and other foreign forces during the war in Afghanistan. A former senior Afghan military source confirmed that the ID badge is indeed authentic. The units were exclusively composed of Afghan nationals and operated under the umbrella of the National Directorate of Security, or NDS, the intelligence agency established with the CIA backing the Afghanistan's previous US-backed government. So I know there's a lot of like, what, when it comes to this stuff. The fact is we understand that it's literally the CIA pinning the CIA against each other in order to establish the stuff. The CIA was involved with the Taliban. The CIA was involved with these death squads. The CIA was involved with the drug trafficking. And so the CIA was orchestrating all this stuff, all these different groups that were fighting each other at the same time in the same country. Why? Because it granted them the ability to have access to that region for whatever they wanted to do. Drugs, military, minerals, and all that type of stuff. So don't get confused by all that. They were considered by the U.S. and its international partners to be among the most trusted domestic forces in Afghanistan. Those units were often labeled death squads by human rights groups. The units were known in Afghanistan for their secrecy and alleged brutality, and members were implicated in numerous extrajudicial killings of civilians, particularly during night raids. We'll get to those details in just a second. The image of the ID badge also carries the word Firebase Gecko, which was the name of the base used by the CIA and the Special Forces in Kandahar in southern Afghanistan, inside what was previously the compound of the Taliban's founding leader, Mullah Mohammed Omar. So the CIA and the Special Forces, along with this unit that this guy was a part of, was using the Taliban's founding leader's compound as a base of operations. Imagine that. Who would have thought? All right, let's get to some details about this group. What we know about the U.S.-backed zero units in Afghanistan. This was a report in 2023. Says at least 452 civilians were killed in 107 raids. This number was almost certainly an undercount. While some raids did result in the capture or death of known militants, others killed bystanders or appeared to target people for no clear reason. So this unit, this particular kill squad here, killed at least 452 civilians in 107 raids. Just kill them. Troubling number of raids appeared to have relied upon faulty intelligence by the CIA and other U.S. intelligence gathering services. 2 Afghan Zero Unit soldiers described raids they were sent on in which they said their targets were chosen by the United States. So they're just picking and choosing people. You need to go kill this person in the middle of the night. Anybody gets in your way, take them out. And if there's any loose ends, take them out. That's what was going on. The former head of Afghanistan's intelligence agency acknowledged that the units were getting it wrong at times and killing civilians. He oversaw the zero units during the crucial period and agreed that no one paid a consequence for those botched raids. Nobody should be surprised by that. The Afghan soldiers weren't alone in the raids. U.S. Special Operations Forces soldiers working with the CIA often joined them. The Afghan soldiers Billings spoke to said that they were typically accompanied on raids by at least 10 U.S. Special Operations Forces soldiers. It's possible that those were ones connected to JSOC and Fort Bragg. We don't know. I should probably look into that and see if there is a connection there, but it's possible that they were, because we know JSOC was heavily involved with Afghanistan. It says military planners baked potential collateral damage into the pre-raid calculus. How many women, children, non-combatants were at risk if the raid went awry, according to one U.S. Army Ranger Billings spoke to. Those forecasts were often wildly off, he said. No one seemed to really care. It says you go on night raids, make more enemies. Then when you got to go kill, or when you got to go on more night raids for the more enemies that you now have to kill. So basically, go on night raids, kill some people. The people find out about it. Now those people are angry at the U.S. soldiers. So now the U.S. soldiers got to go on another night raid to kill those people. And so the more people you kill, the more enemies you make. That's what's going on. I think there was a movie that just came out not too long ago that showed this. They made an emphasis on it. I think it has Brad Pitt in it. And he's talking about, you go into a town and you have 10 enemies. How many enemies do you actually have? And everybody, all the military people in the room said, you got 10 enemies. He said, no, you have 50. Because every person that you kill has 2 friends. Or you have 100. Every enemy that you kill, they have 2 friends. And so every person that you killed, those 2 friends who wasn't thinking about joining the operation because they saw you kill their friend, now they're wanting to join up. So those 2 friends get involved, then those 2 friends. And so every person that you kill, you end up creating 2 more enemies on top of it. I can't remember what the movie is. Maybe somebody in the chat knows what it is, but I remember seeing that scene and it made sense. That's what they're talking about here. It says because the zero units operated under a CIA program, their actions were part of a classified war, with the lines of accountability so obscured that no one had to answer for the operations that went wrong. And U.S. responsibility for the raids was quietly muddied by a legal loophole that allows the CIA and any other U.S. soldiers lent to the agency for the operations to act without the same level of oversight as the American military. It goes on to say the U.S. military and intelligence agencies have long relied on night raids by forces like the O2 unit to fight insurgencies around the globe. It says eyewitnesses, survivors, and family members described how zero unit soldiers had stormed into their homes at night, killing loved ones at more than 30 raid sites Billings visited. No Afghan or U.S. officials returned to investigate, which is pretty interesting. Well, they're not killing people that we know of. You'll notice that these night raids are now starting to happen in the United States to go after immigrants. We've been talking a lot about stuff like that if you pay attention, the same tactics of night raids back then, while they're not just straight up killing these people, but the night raids are happening. Helicopter drops into apartment buildings, pulling people out in the middle of the night, going into people's homes in the middle of the night. They're handcuffing 5-year-old children. They're forcing people out in the middle of the streets in their underwear, so on and so forth. The same tactics that they were doing in Afghanistan are starting to make a presence in the United States. And they're using the immigration to get you to go along with it. Just something to note. We also have this: suspect in shooting of National Guard members face murder charge as U.S. halts asylum decision. So this just came out. It says charges against the man accused of shooting 2 National Guard members have been upgraded to first-degree murder after one of the soldiers died. It was the female, Beckstrom. The United States Attorney for the District of Columbia announced Friday, while investigators continue to seek motive. Says the Trump administration on Friday, it is said it is halting all asylum decisions and has paused issuing visas for people traveling with Afghan passports. They're preparing for something. I don't know what it is, but they're preparing for something. Says Trump called the shooting a terrorist attack and criticized the Biden administration for enabling Afghans who worked with the United States Special Forces during the Afghanistan war to enter the United States. The president has also wanted to permanently pause migration from poorer nations and expel millions of immigrants from the country. He also, I'll say it after this, the director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Joseph Edlow, said in a post on the social platform X that asylum decisions will be paused until we can ensure that every alien is vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. It's also worth noting that Trump has also said, this is the second time he said it. He said it months ago, but he just said it again, that they are looking to denaturalize citizens. So United States citizens that have come and have been naturalized into the country, they're looking to denaturalize them and deport them out if they don't agree with Trump's politics. He has made reference to that twice now, and he just made reference to it a couple days ago. So he's looking to withdraw naturalized citizens and deport them if they don't agree with Trump's politics. That's the next step. Then guess who comes after that? The ones who were born here. I also want to make reference to this. We reported on this. This was in September, but it may be playing a part here. Trump suggests U.S. troops could return to base in Afghanistan. This was September 18th. Says Trump on Thursday. This was September 18th of this year. Suggested that is working to reestablish a U.S. presence at Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan 4 years after America's chaotic withdrawal from the country left the base in Taliban's hands. Which is interesting. He says, look to reestablish a presence at the base. It's basically confirming, which again, there's other stuff out there that confirms it as well, but this is just another confirmation that we still have soldiers in Afghanistan. Just because we had a withdrawal doesn't mean we're not still there. Just keep that in mind. Looks like they just want to reestablish the base. We're trying to get it back, Trump said of the base. It says, while Trump describes his call for the U.S. military to reestablish a position in Afghanistan as breaking news, the Republican president has previously raised the idea, and so on and so forth. So we covered that as well, but there's a chance that all this aggression with Afghanistan that's currently happening right now could be a reason for them to take over the base and start establishing more presence in Afghanistan again. So take with that what you will. On the heels of this, they also announced this as well. This was the 20th that this came out. DHS announces final rule to advance the biometric entry-exit program. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has announced that the publication of the notice of final rule titled Collection of Biometric Data from Aliens Upon Entry to and Departure from the United States. This milestone regulation advances DHS' effort to implement a comprehensive biometric entry-exit program, enhancing national security and streamlining identity verification processes for foreign visitors traveling to and from the United States. This is something that we were talking about from the very beginning, going back to 2024, the beginning of all this stuff. Trump was going to use the immigration process in order to bring in the dystopian digital biometric surveillance system. First, it's going to be for the immigration. Then it's going to be for the U.S. citizen. This stuff is not for the immigrants. This stuff is prepping for us. And how are they doing that? Trump comes in with his cult of personality. Everybody agrees that we need to get rid of the immigration stuff. Well, how is one way that we can do that? We start issuing this biometric system. Everybody goes, yay, we need that to keep the immigrants out. And then all of a sudden it gets flipped over and goes, now we're going to use it for you to make sure that you're not an immigrant. And everybody goes, yay, that's okay. I've got nothing to hide, so I don't need to worry about that. Not realizing that they are accepting the very same thing that if you asked them 2 years ago, they were screaming at the top of their lungs was coming, and they were not in favor of it. But because it's Trump, but because they use the orchestrated event of the immigration problem, everybody's accepting of it. And here it is. Here it is. This is the final rule effective December 26, 2025, amends existing. So it's coming up this year. Next month, this will be active. Amends existing DHS regulations to authorize U.S. Customs and Border Protection, an operational component within DHS, to collect facial biometrics from all non-citizens upon entry and exit at airports, land ports, seaports, and other authorized ports of departure. This removes prior exemptions, including diplomats and most Canadian visitors. It also removes limitations on pilot programs and expands biometric collection to new transportation modalities, including sea exit, private aircraft, vehicle entry exit, and pedestrian exit. Goes on to say, this final rule marks a major milestone towards our efforts to successfully implement the biometric entry-exit mandate and strengthen the security of the United States, said Acting Executive Assistant Commissioner, CBP Office of Field Operations, Diane J. Sabatino. With increased funding to support this critical mission, we will continue to expand facial biometrics and advanced technology for identity verification to further secure and innovate the entry-exit process, air, sea, and land. In early 2017, Donald Trump issued an executive order requiring expedited completion and implementation of biometric entry and exit. It's funny because I continue to get called or told by people who support Trump that Trump had nothing to do with wanting to get a digital biometric surveillance system up. And I kept telling them that he set up the ground floor for it during his first administration. And everybody said that you're an idiot and that you don't know anything about it and that Trump is here to save us for that. And now look at what happened. He set it up in his first term. Then they brought in Biden to create the chaos in order to execute what Trump set up in his first term. If you just look at it, it's so simple. A kindergartner can come up with that one. This is literally the very definition of problem, reaction, solution. It's right there in front of our faces. But you have to stop playing the left-right paradigm game. You have to exit the cult of personality politics. You have to get rid of that deceptive hedge in order to see what's really going on. And once you do, it's so simple. It's so simple. It's like they just took a piece of paper and they wrote it in crayon and said, let's do this. And sure enough, it worked. Because country plays the political game. Goes on to say, as part of this effort, CBP built the Traveler Verification System, a secure cloud-based facial biometrics matching service to automate the identity verification process and reduce administrative burdens on officers. Now, this is where they're lying to you, and I'll show you why. It says, although U.S. citizens are not covered by this rule, they may continue to voluntarily participate in the facial biometric process at entry and exit. U.S. citizens who prefer to opt out of the facial biometrics process may simply notify a CBP officer or airline representative and undergo manual inspection of their passport as required by international travel. But they just announced this. No real ID. It could cost you $18 to go through TSA checkpoints under proposed rule. Okay. It says airline passengers without a real ID or passport could face an $18 fee under a new rule proposed by the Transportation Security Administration. Under the proposed rule, set to be published in the Federal Register on Thursday, travelers without the required identification will have their identity verified on a new biometric kiosk system before they're permitted to pass through checkpoint. But you just said that it was voluntary. We didn't have to do it. But now they're saying that if you don't have the correct ID, you're going to have to do it anyways and pay a fee on top of it. The $18 fee, which will allow passengers to access TSA checkpoints for 10 days, will be used to help pay for the new technology, according to the notice. And the thing is we talked about this. We were wondering what it was. Remember when DHS Secretary Kristi Noem announced the $1 billion TSA investment on new technology? Found it. Found it. It's right there. It says the Federal Real ID Act was passed by Congress in 2005 in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. Oh, problem, reaction, solution again. After years of delay, which, by the way, again, we've gone over it before, the people involved with the 9/11 attacks, United States intelligence, Saudi Arabia intelligence, and Israeli intelligence. Go look it up. After years of delays, the Department of Homeland Security in May finally began enforcing the Real ID requirement for travelers on domestic flights. If a traveler goes through a TSA checkpoint without a Real ID or passport, TSA plans to use what it's referencing as a modernized alternative identity verification program to verify their identity through the individual's biometric biographic information, according to the notice. So not only will you have to give up your biometric data in order to fly, but on top of that, you're going to be paying for the very technology that's taking your biometric data. That should make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. See, not only are they going to stick their thumb on it, but they're going to make you voluntarily pay money for sticking their thumb on you. It's genius, really. Rounding this out, how are we doing on time? We're going to go a little late. Just hang with me. We got to get through all this stuff, though. It's all connected. So hang with me. I'll try and get you out here quick. It says judge rules Trump's DC National Guard deployment was illegal. So this is what I was referencing early on. I want to bring this up again because there's something I'm going to show you that may be something. It may not. I will just leave it at that. So judge rules Trump DC National Guard deployment was illegal or unlawful. It's technically unlawful in the actual written paper. And then this is saying illegal. Take with that what you will. It says a federal judge ruled Thursday that President Donald Trump's deployment of 2,000 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. was illegal, concluding he lacks authority to send troops in for the deterrence of crime. U.S. District Judge Jacob said that while Trump may be the commander-in-chief of the Guard, his power is constrained by federal laws that limit how those troops can be federalized and deployed, particularly in Washington, D.C., which is controlled by Congress. So we called for that. Judge said, not going to happen. You either need to withdraw or appeal. And they gave a window of 21 days, which is a very large window. It's usually somewhere about a week, but they gave them 21 days. Interesting. It's just interesting. That's all. I'm not inferring anything. It's just fascinating why it's bigger. But still. So then we know during this period of time, the shooter comes in, shoots the National Guard. They deploy 500 more troops and so on and so forth. We see what's happening there. Why I'm bringing this up? Because the judge issued this November 20th, 2025. November 20th, 2025. Why is that important? Some people have found, which Google has conveniently wiped away now, but I did confirm that it is true, that Google Trend searches. So for those who search on Google, it creates a chart that you can, if you type in the name and the region that you're looking, it'll show the trend of how many people are looking up that person on such and such day. Well, 2 people in the District of Washington, D.C. searched the name Ramanullah Lockenwall, the shooter of the National Guard, on November 20th, 2025. Why is there 2 people in Washington, D.C. looking up this random Afghan dude who lives in Washington State on the same day that the judge issues the unlawful order of deployment for National Guard members. That's 6 days before the shooting. Then, if that's not enough, hours before the shooting on the same day, so jumping over 6 days ahead, on the same day, hours before, 84 people searched his name in DC at 2:24 a.m. 100 people searched his name at 3:28 a.m. and 22 people searched his name at 8 a.m. All hours before the shooting even occurred in DC. Now, always take Google trend searches with a grain of salt. I can't begin to stress that enough. This cannot be used as like a definitive thing. But it's fascinating that this dude's name was searched in DC by 2 people 6 days before the shooting on the same day that the judge issued the unlawful order. Something tells me there's a couple of morons that caught wind of this in DC and searched his name on a public database, and that's why it popped up. And as I said, Google went and wiped this data yesterday. So, pretty interesting. Finishing this off, told you to hang on to the name Fort Bragg. It's popped up a couple times, and I told you it was going to happen at the end too. When we talk about the psychological warfare, when we talk about the drug trafficking trade and the headlines of what's going on with Trump saying he's going to kill the people of the drug traffickers of Venezuela, but I'm going to pardon people connected to it. And we see all the stuff happening with the CIA and the Afghan war and Vietnam and Laos. And we go through all these things, the JSOC and Fort Bragg and everything like that. Well, we know Fort Bragg houses the PSYOP unit for the U.S. military. And this just came out. This is Fort Bragg Psychological Warfare Group post chilling video. We are everywhere. This was November 28th, 2025. This is a secretive Fort Bragg operation that specializes in influencing people's thoughts, have released a hypnotic recruitment video that is laced with hidden meanings and strange images. Known as the 4th Psychological Operations Airborne, or 4th PSYOP, the group specializes in using the power of mind to persuade opinion and discourse among the nation's enemies. We've covered a couple of their videos like years ago. We haven't talked about them much recently, but we have covered this group before. They have multiple recruitment videos out there. The 1 minute, 17-second clip posted November 19th on social media is a string of baffling clips, including old cartoons, masked figures hiding in plain sight, and a group of people staring blankly at the viewer over the phrase, "We are everywhere." It's similar to their other stuff too. It says the art of PSYOP relies on persuasion rather than physical force. The tools of the trade are logic, fear, desire, and other mental factors used to evoke specific emotions, attitudes, and behaviors, according to the U.S. Army report. The ultimate objective is to persuade enemy, neutral, and friendly nations and forces to take favorable actions towards the U.S. and its allies. It is based out of Fort Bragg, one of the largest military complexes in the world and home of the 82nd Airborne and U.S. Special Operations Command. JSOC, that's where the drug stuff was going on. That's where the murders were happening, all that type of stuff. We covered some of that. This is the PSYOP soldiers help ensure decision makers, partners, and populations receive the right message at the right time. The right message doesn't mean it's the morally correct message or the truth. It just means their propaganda is the right message at the right time. Quiet Professionals, Global Impact, the 1st Special Forces Command Airborne wrote in a post that shared the recruitment videos. So this group is all about manipulation of not only foreign, but also domestic. They constantly are manipulating us and our media and everything around us. Why am I bringing this up? Because the connections continue to go forward. Yep, everybody knows General Flynn, Michael Flynn, and his brother Charlie Flynn. We talked about their connection to Palantir and what they do. This was 2017. This is when I saw the photos this week of grim-faced Michael Flynn. He seemed unrecognizable as the same man who joshed around with his kid brother just a few years ago at Fort Bragg. That's right. Michael Flynn and his brother Charlie Flynn were also part of Fort Bragg as well. It says Flynn was in town to pick up the award from the Association of Special Operations Professional. This was in 2017, but he was no stranger to the Eastern North Carolina. He had military intelligence jobs in the 82nd Airborne Division, 18th Airborne Corps, and more importantly, Joint Special Operations. JSOC is Fort Bragg's most secretive command, so secret it has its own gated compound within the gated Army post. So Michael Flynn is connected to that as well. You know who else is connected to that as well? Two guys, Colonel Paul E. Valley and Major Michael A. Aquino, from the PSYOP to the Mind War, the Psychology of Victory. I'm sure some of people know who these people are. Everybody knows Aquino. He's the dude. Everybody knows him as being connected to the Church of Satan. He's got the weird eyebrows. He founded the Temple of Set, which goes back to ancient Egyptian stuff, but people also don't realize that early on in his life, he was also connected to the Mormon Church. And Valley we'll get to in just a second. But just a couple things I want to point out on this. This is a paper that was written by Aquino, and it was Valley who came to him and said he wants him to write it. And he says, thus it was in 1980, Colonel Paul E. Valley, commander of the 7th PSYOP Group. So Paul Valley, commander of 7th PSYOP Group, asked me at his headquarters, PSYOP Research and Analysis team leader, to draft a paper that would encourage some future thought within the PSYOP community. He did not want a Vietnam postmortem, but rather some fresh and innovative ideas concerning PSYOP, evolution, and application. I prepared an initial draft, which Colonel Valley reviewed and annotated, which resulted in revised drafts and critiques until he was satisfied. And the results of this was this paper, From PSYOP to Mind War, the Psychology of Victory. I urge you guys, I was planning on going over a few of these things, but we just don't have time to do it. But I urge you guys, it's only 10 pages long. And if you just search the PSYOP From PSYOP to Mind War, it'll pop up and you guys can read it. Go and read it, because you'll notice that the very same tactics that Aquino and Valley came up in this psychological warfare paper are the same ones being applied to us right now in the United States through the political system. It's verbatim, one for one, that it's the same tactics that's being done, the same tactics that you'll find in the media, by the government, through social media, and in the church is being done, and this is being deployed. Why I'm bringing this up is because Paul E. Valley is heavily connected to the Q movement. And so this was during a interview on November 19th, 2019, being interviewed on Steel Truth, which is the Ann Vandersteel. Ann Vandersteel is another one of those propagandists as well. I want to never follow her. But he said, well, I probably don't know that much more than you do, than I've been on the receiving end of the distribution of Q reports that come out. And like you, I understand it's a cadre of retired military intelligence officers that closely watch what's going on in our government and basically in the intelligence business, which I was in for years. He was part of the 7th PSYOP group with Aquino. That's what he did. That's what he did. He says they gather real intelligence, fact-based intelligence, and that they can pass on, and they do this discreetly now through the internet and through email distribution postings. So we'll see. They've got forecasting what's going to happen with Attorney General Barr's release, his imminent release. Hopefully that's going to be within the next week and before Thanksgiving. Again, this was 2019. On the sealed indictments that they have against these people who betrayed the country, like James Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan, and the rest of them, all going back to Hillary Clinton and even into the White House to Obama. So they're tracking all that. So that's all I can tell you about Q. But that's not all he can tell you about Q, because if we go to this is a short clip. It's about a minute long from a October 14th, 2019 interview that he did with Americanuck Radio. I want you guys to hear what he said about this.
General Valley, I have a question for you from our chat room on the Americanuck Radio fan page. Do you know who the individual calling himself or themselves, if it's an organizational effort, Q. What do you know about that? Was that part of the PSYOP? What are you at liberty to say? Or is it a bunch of bunk?
Well, let me just tell you the QAnon's tied to information. And it comes out of a group called the Army of Northern Virginia. Okay?
Yep.
Now, this is a group of military intelligence specialists of over 800 people that advise the president.
And
So he's saying it's coming out of this group of about 800 people from West Virginia, military intelligence group that advised the president. That's what he said. Let's keep going.
The president doesn't have a lot of confidence in the CIA or even the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, as much anymore. So he relies on these real operators. Most of them are special operations type of people.
Yeah.
And so this is where Q picks up and gets some of their information, as I understand it.
So Mr. Vale here, who's a part of the 7th PSYOP operation, who wrote Mind War back in the 80s with Aquino, Mormon, Satanist, Temple of Set, and also a psychological dude who was accused of pedophilia stuff on a U.S. Air Force, or not Air Force, but a U.S. base in San Francisco, but that's a different conversation. Valley, who's connected to all that stuff, it was one of the main proponents of the Q movement, along with Michael Flynn. All of those guys are connected to Fort Bragg as well, if you want to take a look at that. But Valley is connected to Q, promoted them, even seems to have insider information about where these people come from, where they get their information from, was flaunting all this type of stuff and everything like that. Fascinating that he would be sitting on the board of Turning Point USA, because if you go to Board of Advisors and you scroll down, where's he at? You'll see that Paul Valley is actually an advisory council member for Turning Point USA. So y'all want to sit there and really tell me that Turning Point USA isn't a PSYOP, a psychological group? Even though they got people all connected to the ecumenical movement, Mormon group, Catholic Church, Church of Scientology, and multiple people connected to the psychological unit of the U.S. military. Y'all really want to sit there and tell me that Turning Point USA is all good? Hey, pastors, answer this one. No, don't go cower in your hole and ignore the question and delete the comments and stuff. No, give me an answer. All the pastors out there calling Charlie Kirk a martyr for the faith when he was nothing but a political propagandist. All the people saying we need to support Turning Point USA, even though it's literally not even remotely close to a Christian organization. Who's paying you? Whose money are you receiving to promote this? And if you're blindly supporting this, you're just failing at your job. You guys can go look more information up about that if you want to. But I'm at my wit's end. I'll be honest, guys. I have my weeks where I get frustrated. I try not to. I've gotten better at it. I used to just be frustrated all the time. But now it's just in intermittent situations, which still working on it. But I'm at my wit's end when it comes to these pastors and these prophecy teachers. It's unbelievable. They don't give a rip about vetting anything. They don't give a rip about the truth. They don't give a rip about finding out information. They don't give a rip about standing on biblical principles. The only thing that they give a rip about is how many people can I get on my YouTube videos? How many other people in this network can I get connected to in order to promote my stuff? How many eyeballs can I get? How many book sales can I get? How many people can I get going into my church and stuff like that? How much fame and fortune can I earn from this stuff? And nobody cares about the truth of what's going on. Nobody cares. The church is dead. I've been one of those people who said the church is dying. It's close to... I'm at this point now where the church is dead. That doesn't bring a smile to my face. It doesn't. We knew it was coming, though. It's not a surprise, but the church is dead. Nobody cares. The church is so wrapped up, and I'm talking about pastors, I'm talking about Christians, I'm talking about the whole lot, the whole gamut of it. They are so wrapped up in everything worldly, but yet they are the first person to point out that you're causing division if you try and point it out. If you're one of those people that wants to stand on biblical principles and you're willing to call it out, they are the first person to not only point their finger at you, but to send their wolf pack of cult personality followers to come at you and declare that you're the one stirring up division, even though you're the one that's trying to point out that they're doing the wrong thing. It's backwards. It's upside down. That's why I try and tell you guys, no matter what, stand on the truth. Look for the truth. You know, it used to be one of those things where the truth is there, but the truth has gotten to the point where it's hiding. It's hiding now. You got to try and find it. But I guarantee you will be better off. Rather than consuming 500 opinions from all these other people about 500 different topics, it's better to spend time diving into 50 things on your own and truly coming up with a informed idea of what is going on. I used to be on that side of, I'm going to consume everybody. I'm going to listen to all these people. I'm going to hear all these things. I'm going to take in all their opinions and speculate. I was one of those people. For people who've been around here, you guys know, as soon as I started getting hooked up with that prophecy mafia, I was the new kid on the block. I was going around and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm getting all these people that I'm now connected to in this network, and I'm starting to, get out there, talk about all these things, and then I started to see what was going on, and I was like, oh, this is what's going on. And then I started to talk about things that didn't go along with the narrative, and people started backing away from me. And I started to step on some toes, disproving what those people were saying. More people started to back away from me. And then I started to just be outright against the agenda that they were promoting. And all of a sudden, I had the little pit bull, or it was more like a chihuahua, let off the leash, with Lee Brainerd coming and with the group of people behind the scenes saying, you need to stop talking about this stuff. I said no. And all of a sudden, I got blackballed and I got all these people. Why? Because I was standing for the truth. These other people aren't. We've got to make sure that we are standing for the truth of things. We're standing on biblical foundation, that we are standing for Christ. Nothing else matters. We have an audience of one, and that's Christ. The same Christ who offers his gospel, which provides salvation through the finished work upon the cross that he completed, which is as simple as ABC. A is you admit that you're a sinner, the act of repentance, the changing of mind, metanoia, turning from self to Christ. Everything in this world is about self. It's about me. We just went through, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes of information that's all about selfish corruption, me deals from many aspects. And that's just cracking the surface. But Christ says it's not about you. It's about him and the work that he did and his glory. So it's through repentance that allows us to have true belief in Jesus Christ. We believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only, and he lived the perfect sinless life, the only one to do so, which means he was the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world upon his shoulders. He carried my sin, he carried your sin, he carried the world's sin upon his shoulders. He gave his life upon the cross, where he was crucified, and he died in my place. But the story doesn't end there, because there is power in the blood of Jesus Christ, and he did exactly as he promised, prophesied, and said that he would. He defeated death and rose again on the third day. For all who believe in him shall not perish, but live forever in his presence and in his glory. His glory. The glory is his. He defeated death. And it's through the finished work upon that cross, the spilled blood that he gave, that we find salvation. That our names are written in the book of life. And that we will be in his presence in the end. And see, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation through Jesus, we receive an incredible gift, a supernatural gift of prayer that allows us direct access to the throne room of God, where we can go to God the Father any day, any hour, any minute, and communicate with him. We say, Lord God, thank you for sending your son, Jesus Christ, to be the perfect, spotless lamb sacrifice so that I may live. Because Christ gave his life, you deserve mine. Thank you, Lord, for just giving us your word, a foundational pillar of truth that we can stand on, that we are to gauge everything in this world by. Lord, help us to use it. Help us to stand by it. Help us to live it. And for us to be bold in this time where the world grows darker. Help us to have our light be brighter. Lord Jesus, we pray that you come soon. In your holy name we pray, Maranatha. Amen. Amen. All right. My light turned off. I had a power outage a few weeks ago. That was the Saturday we couldn't. Or no, power came back on. But I had a power outage a couple weeks ago. And ever since then, that light just turns on and off whenever it feels like it. And I don't know what's going on with it. Can't figure it out. All right. We are way late. What do we have as far as questions? We only have one question? Is that it? We only have one question. Okay, so we don't have to worry about question stuff here. All right. we only have one question. All right. Well, and it's not just me. I just saw it, too. I just read it. Oh, man. Oh. I've got tears. This is kind of a question for everybody, so everybody's able to ask. Who wants an orange whip? Stephanie asks, who wants an orange whip? If you guys get the reference of that, that's great. Oh, Stephanie, that's great. That's a good one. I'll What do I got here? Where's that? There we go. Man, as soon as I read that, I was transported into the scene of that movie. That's great. All right, guys, that's all we got. Go ahead and get your orange whips on the way out. But yeah, usual spiel if you guys can. Like, share, subscribe. Get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid, like, share, subscribe, certainly appreciate it. Hopefully we can get this out to people. We can give people some information, some fact of what's going on, hopefully answer some questions, and ultimately give them the gospel of Jesus Christ. So if you guys can do me a solid, like, share, subscribe, certainly appreciate it. If you guys can, follow Rumble and Telegram as well. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be backup live streaming over on Rumble, so make sure you guys follow over there. And then Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format. I just kind of throw up over there as well. So but yeah, if you don't like Rumble, you don't like Telegram, make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. Your one-stop shop to stay up to date on what's going on. Latest podcasts and live streams, announcements, the free book to downloads there, and all that type of stuff. So make sure you guys bookmark the website so you're always in the know of what's going on. And last but not least, if you guys would like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, GiftSendGo. This channel's not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. Run solely off of your guys' generous donations. So if you guys would like to support this channel and everything. I don't sell things. I don't do paywalls. I don't do memberships. I don't do any of that stuff. It is solely based on your guys' donations. So thank you guys. And I appreciate your support, your prayers, your kind words and encouragement, and your donations and everything. You guys are awesome. So you guys are the ones that make this run, and I am so incredibly blessed. So thank you guys for that. So all right, guys, that's it. I apologize for going long. We got church tomorrow, so make sure you guys get your wretched, heathenic, misfit booties to church. And yeah, make sure you guys grab your orange whip on the way out. Peanuts got them in the back. I'll leave you guys right here. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.